Hello everyone, my name is Huiling Zhao. Today we study the functions 11, chapter 3, quadratic functions. The topic is operation with radicals. Summary. Number 1, radicals are square, cubic, or higher root, such as square root of 4 equal 2 and the cubic of cubic root of 27 is 3. It's called a radical symbol. Number 2, entire radical, a radical with a coefficient 1, for example, the square root of 12. Number 3, mixing radicals, a radical with coefficient other than 1, for example, 2 times square root of 3. Entire radical can sometimes be simplified by expressing them as a product of two radicals, one of which contains a perfect square. This result is in a mix the square root of a times square root of b equal the square root of a times b. And another example, c times square root of a times d times square root of b equals c times d and times the square root of a and b. Example 1. Express each of the as mixing radical in simplest form. There are 4 questions. Number A, the square root of 27, B, the square root of 50, C, the square root of 98. The last one is square root of 32. Solution 1. The square root of 27 equal 3 times square root of 3 because 27 equal 9 times 3. Number B, the square root of 50 equal 5 times square root of 2 because 50 equal 25 times 2 and the 25 equal 5 square. So the final answer is 5 times square root of 2. Number C, the square root of 98, and we know 98 equal 49 times 2, so the answer is 7 times square root of 2. And last question, the square root of 32, and the 32 equal 13 times 2, so the answer is 4 times square root of 2. Example 2, simplify. There are 4 questions. Number 1, the square root of 5 times square root of 7. Number B, the square root of 11 times square root of 6. Number C, 2 times square root of 3 times 5 times square root of 2. Last question, negative 4 times square root of 3 times a times square root of 13. Solution. The square root of 5 times square root of 7 equal the square root of 35 because 5 times 7. And number B, because 11 times 6 is 66, so the answer is square root of 66. The last question, the 2 times 5 is 10, and in the square root there are 3 and times 2 is 6, so the final answer is 10 times square root of 6. Last question, negative 4 times square root of 3 times a times square root of 13. So in outside of the square root there are negative 4 times negative 8 is negative 32, and in square root of 3 times 13 is 39. Solution 2. That's it. Next example 3. Simplify. There are 4 questions. Number A, 4 times square root of 5 plus 3 times square root of 5. Number B, 9 times square root of 7 minus 4 times square root of 7. Number C, 3 times square root of 3 plus 8 times square root of 2 minus 4 times square root of 3 plus 11 times square root of 2. Number D, the square root of 8 minus the square root of 18. Solution A. Outside of the square root, there are 4 plus 3, so its answer is 7. In the square root, the same is 5, so it's the square root of 5 here, so the final answer is 7 times square root of 5. Number B, there's same square root 7, so the outside number is 9 minus 4 is 5, so the answer is 5 times square root of 7. Number 3, there are 2 types of square root. One is square root of 3, another one is square root of 2. So the grouping, like first 3 times square root of 3, and then the negative 4 times square root of 3. So there's the correction that 2 terms. So the answer is negative 1 square root of 3. For the square root of 2, there are 2 terms. One is 8 times square root of 2, another one is 11 times square root of 2. So this is the answer is 19 times square root of 2. Number D, the square root of 8 minus square root of 18. So we know the 18 equals 2 times 9. So the second term is 3 times square root of 2. And then for the square root of a equals 4 times 2. So this one changes into 2 times square root of 2. So the final answer is negative 1 times square root of 2. Example 4. There are 5 questions. Number A, square root of 3 times 2 times the square root of 5. Number B, 2 times square root of 2 times in the bracket there are square root of 7 plus 3 times square root of 3. Number C, the square of 4 times square root of 2. Number D, 4 times square root of 3 times 3 times square root of 6. The last question is negative 7 times square root of 2 times 5 times square root of 8. And solution 1, expand that first. So 2 times square root of 2. And second term is in the square root there are 3 and there are 5. So this 3 times 5 is 15, sorry. And then this answer is 2 times the square root of 3 and the square root of 15. Number 2, expand that first. So 2 times square root of 2 times square root of 7. So we can get the 2 times square root of 14. And the second term is 2 times 3 is 6. And the 2 times 3 and 6 in the square root. So the number B, the answer is 2 times square root of 14 plus 6 times square root of 6. Number C, the 4 times 4 square is 16, and the square root of 2 square is 2. So the final answer is 32. Number D, 4 times square root of 3 times square of 6. So the outside of the square root there are 3 and 4. So 3 times 4 is 12. And in the square root is 3 and times 6. So you have the 3 times square root of 2. So is the 12 times 3 is 36, and then times square root of 2. Number E, negative 7 times square root of 2 times 5 times square root of 8. So negative 7 times 5 is negative 35. And then a equals 4 times 2. So in the square root there are 2, the square root 2, and then square root 4. So you get is 4. And then the 4 times negative 35 is negative 140. And next number, example 5. Express each radical in simplest radical form. There are 4 questions. Number 8, the square root of a cubic. Number B, square root of x the power 5 times power 6, y power 6. Number C, 5 times square root of n the power is 7 minus 2 times n times square root of n the power is 5. D, there are 2 factors. So first one is the square root of p plus 2 times square root of q. And the second factor is the square root of q minus the square root of p. The solution is number A. Square root of the a cubic. You can separate this a cubic inside is a square times a. So the final answer is a times square root of 8. Number B, the x the power is 5 can change it into x square and then square and then times x, and y the power 6 can change into y the cubic and then square. So the final answer is x squared times y cubic times the square root of x. Number C, 5 times square root of n the power 7 minus 2n times the square root of n power is 5. So the first term we can change into 5 times n the cubic and the square root of n. And second term is negative 2n cubic times square root of n. The final answer is 3n cubic times the square root of n. Last question is expand at first and then simplify. And number 1 term is the square root of p times square root of q. That is the square root of p times q. The second one is square root of p times square root of p. This p is negative. Number 3rd term, 2 times square root of q times square root of q. So it's 2q. Last term is 2 times square root of q times negative square root of p. So the answer is negative 2 the square root of p times q. So to simplify, get the answer is negative square root of p times q minus p plus 2q. Example 6. There are 4 questions. Number A, the square root of 7 times square root of 14. Number B, 3 times square root of 5 times 2 times square root of 15. Number C, square root of 12 plus 2 times square root of 48 minus 5 times square root of 27. Number D, there are 2 factors. The first factor is 4 minus square root of 3 times 5 plus 2 times square root of 3. Number E, 3 times square root of 28 minus 2 times square root of 50 plus square root of 63 minus 3 times square root of 18. The solution is number A, because 14 equals 7 times 2. So there are 2 square root of 7. So the final answer is 7 times square root of 2. Number B, because 15 equals 2 times 5. So here there are 2 square root of 5. So 5 times 6 is 30. The final answer is 30 times square root of 3. Number C question. The 12 equals 4 times 3. So you separate the square root of 4 times square root of 3. And the second term is 48 equals 16 times 3. So it is separated 2 terms, square root of 16 times square root of 3. And the last term is 27, is 3 times 9. So next, the first term is 2 times square root of 3, because the square root of 4 equals 2. And the middle term is square root of 16 is 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. 8 times square root of 3. The last term is the square root of 9 is 3. 3 times 5 is 15. So this is equal, the all is the square root of 3. So this equal negative 5 and square root. This is the final answer. And number D is expand at first. The first term is 4 times 5 is 20. And then 4 times 2 times square root of 3 is 8 times square root of 3. Next, 5 times negative square root of 3 is negative 5 times square root of 3. The last term is negative square root of 3 times 2 times square root of 3. This is the negative. Is 3 times 2 is 6. And then is a correction that is 20 minus 6 is 14. And is 8 minus 5 is 3. So the last term is 3 times square root of 3. The last question. 28 equals 4 times 7. And the square root of 28 equals the square root of 4 times square root of 7. And the 50 equals the 25 times 2 is separate 2. Square root of 25 times square root of 2. And the 63 equals the 7 times 9. So let's separate this term into the square root of 9 times square root of 7. The last term is 18 equal to 9 times 2. So the last term is 3 the times square root of 9 times square root of 2. So you can get this first term is 2 times 3 is 6, so it is 6 times square root of 7. The second term is 2 times 5 is 10, so it's negative 10 times square root of 2. And the third one is 3 times square root of 7. The last term is 9, negative 9 times square root of 2. So there are two types of square root. One is 7, one is 2. So it's simplify that. But the square root of 7 is because 6 plus 3 is 9. And the next is square root of 2 is negative 10, negative 9, so it's negative 19. All above we're talking about the operation, the radicals. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching. Please share the video to somebody who want to study this course. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.